The room grows still, and the weight of the day begins to lift, bone by bone, thought by thought. The air settles, the light dims, and the mind, if allowed, can drift toward a quieter place. A space where time moves differently, more slowly, more gently. This is a space for that drift. If the work here offers a soft place to rest, a simple subscription or a like is a quiet way to support it. Nothing more than a gentle acknowledgement, offered freely and without expectation. In the slow dark of a Japanese night, long before the first bird calls or the light touches the paper screens, the first sounds of the day begin. Not with alarm, but with the soft slide of a wooden door in its track, the distant creak of a floorboard under a careful step, the whisper of a sleeve against a wall. The house, like the society it shelters, is waking to routine. In the kitchen, or what serves as one in a space of packed earth and charcoal, a servant or a wife kneels to breathe life into the embers of the previous night's fire. It is a task of patience, a small, repetitive ritual of blowing and feeding, coaxing warmth from ash. Outside, the village is still a collection of shadows and thatched shapes, but the smell of smoke begins to thread through the chill air, the first signal that another cycle of labor and obligation has begun. There is no rush to this awakening. It is slow, methodical, as predictable as the tide. The water in the kettle will take time to heat, just as the sun will take time to crest the distant, forested hills. For now, there is only the quiet, the cold, and the patient work of beginning. The samurai's morning is a different kind of ritual, one steeped in the weight of cloth and code. His sleep has been watched over by the gleam of a sword stand in the corner, a constant, silent presence in the room. Before he dresses, before he even stands, his mind will sometimes run through the day's first formalities, the precise angle of a bow to a superior, the correct phrase for greeting a visiting elder. His wife moves with a similar gravity, her silence a form of respect, her tasks a quiet choreography of service. The layers of a kimono are not simply put on. They are arranged, each fold a statement, each knot a seal of intent. The color of an underrobe, the pattern of a sleeve, these are not choices but declarations, signaling clan, status, and the season's turning. By the time he steps from his quarters, his face is a mask of composed readiness, the private man packed away beneath layers of silk and discipline. The first light now touches the tops of the pines, and the day of judgment, of observation, of performance, has fully arrived. For the farmer, the day's first light is not a signal to begin but a confirmation that he is already late. He has been in the fields since the sky was a deep, star-scattered indigo, his body moving through the motions of planting or weeding by a memory older than his own mind. The cold mud seeps through his straw sandals, a constant, numbing presence that will become a dull ache by midday and a sharp pain by nightfall. His breakfast, eaten standing at the edge of the paddy, is a cold ball of rice wrapped in a leaf, chewed quickly, swallowed without taste. He does not look at the horizon, at the mountains turning gold in the sunrise. He looks down at the water, at the stalks, at the endless, repetitive task in front of him. A wife or a daughter brings tea, walking carefully along the narrow ridges between fields, a baby tied to her back, her own day already a blur of cooking, cleaning, and fetching. The conversations in the field are few, practical. A shared tool. Comment on the lack of rain. The silence is not empty. It is filled with the sounds of labor, the squelch of mud, the rustle of leaves, the distant caw of a crow. Time here is not measured in hours but in the sun's progress across the sky, a slow, merciless arc of heat and toil. In the town, the merchants are opening their shutters, each wooden panel slid aside to reveal the wares within. Bolts of cloth, bundles of vegetables, small pots of oil or pickles. There is a subtle energy here, a hum of commerce that exists just beneath the surface of a society that officially scorns it. A merchant must be polite, deeply, endlessly polite. His bow's a fraction deeper than a samurai's. His words chosen with the care of a poet composing a difficult line. He cannot show his wealth too plainly, cannot laugh too loudly, cannot seem too pleased with a successful sale. His success is a quiet thing, a private calculation of profit hidden in a ledger, a better meal at the end of the day, a slightly warmer coat for his children in the winter. His wife sits beside him, sewing or sorting, her eyes missing nothing, the slight flicker of her gaze marking every passerby, every potential customer, every figure of authority who might cast a disapproving look their way. The street fills slowly, with servants on errands, with artisans carrying their tools, with the occasional, terrifying glide of a samurai through the crowd, a path clearing before him like water parting around a stone. The bathhouse, when a village is fortunate enough to have one, is a world apart. The steam that billows from its low door is a visible exhalation of warmth in the cold air, an invitation to a different kind of social order. Inside, the distinctions of the outside world are meant to dissolve in the heat. A samurai, stripped of his swords and layered silks, might sit beside the farmer whose fields he passes without a glance. An artisan, his hands calloused and stained, shares the same wooden bucket of hot water as a merchant. The silence here is different, too. It is not the tense silence of respect or the exhausted silence of labor, but a kind of communal letting go, a shared surrender to the heat that loosens muscles and, for a time, eases the rigid structure of life. Children splash in the shallower water, their laughter a rare, bright sound against the thick wood and stone. The old men soak the longest, their leathery skin a map of years lived under the sun, their eyes half closed, lost in memories of other winters, other baths, other lives. To enter the water without first scrubbing clean is a transgression of the highest order, a violation of the unspoken contract. The bath is not for becoming clean, but for being clean. It is a reward for the labor of hygiene, a few minutes of suspended reality before stepping back out into the cold, back into the weight of one's assigned place. A samurai's day is a long corridor of such moments, each one a potential test. A meeting with his lord is a performance of absolute stillness. He kneels on the tatami, his posture perfect, his eyes lowered, his hands resting in his lap in the prescribed position. The Lord speaks, his voice a low rumble about rice yields, about a neighboring clan's movements, about a minor infraction by a junior retainer. The samurai listens, his face a mask of attentive respect, but his mind is a storm of analysis. What is meant by that pause? Is that a question or a statement? Should he offer his opinion, or is silence the greater wisdom? He has trained his whole life for this, to read the smallest shift in a man's posture, the slightest flicker in his eye. The Lord's tea is cold. He does not drink it. The samurai notices, filing the detail away for later consideration. After the audience, he walks to the training grounds, his steps measured, his expression unchanged. He will spend the next hour with a wooden sword, practicing a single cut over and over until his arms burn and his mind goes blank. It is not about violence. It is about discipline. It is about making the correct movement so ingrained that it requires no thought at all. In the space between one swing and the next, there is only the body, the wood, and the air. The village headman's home is slightly larger than the others, a fact that speaks not of wealth but of responsibility. Here, at the end of the day, the men gather to discuss the business of survival. The air is thick with the smoke from oil lamps and the smell of unwashed bodies and the sourness of cheap sake. The talk is of the tax collector's imminent arrival, of the need to repair the irrigation channel before the next rain, of the young man caught stealing a chicken from a neighbor's yard. The headman listens, his face lined with a weariness that has little to do with physical labor. He is the buffer between his village and the world outside, the one who must translate the Lord's demands into the reality of empty storehouses and hungry children. He must be firm, but he must also be just. He must enforce the rules, but he must also protect his people. His decisions are not about right or wrong, but about balance, about keeping the fragile peace of the community from shattering. A punishment is discussed, not harsh, but public, a warning to others. The stolen chicken will be returned, and the young man will work an extra day on the headman's own fields. It is a compromise, a way of restoring order without creating an enemy. The men nod, the matter settled. They drink more sake, the talk turning to the weather, to the health of a cow, to nothing at all. Outside, the night is deep and silent. The village a huddle of dark shapes under a sky of brilliant, indifferent stars. Inside a samurai's home, the evening meal is another ritual of quiet observation. The family eats in near silence. The only sounds the soft click of chopsticks on ceramic and the careful sip of soup. The father sits at the head, his portion slightly larger, his bowl slightly finer. The children, even the young ones, have learned to eat without noise, without fidgeting, their eyes on their food. The mother serves, moving with a fluid grace that makes the work seem effortless. She anticipates her husband's needs, refilling his cup before he can ask, removing an empty dish without a word. The conversation, if it can be called that, is minimal. A question about a son's progress in his studies, answered with a simple, direct report. A comment about the cold, met with a silent nod. The food is simple, nourishing, a bowl of soup, some pickled vegetables, a piece of grilled fish, rice. There is no indulgence in this meal, no pleasure taken beyond the simple satisfaction of hunger. It is fuel for the body, a necessary pause before the final duties of the day. Afterwards, the father may retire to write a poem or practice his calligraphy. The brush strokes a final exercise in control before sleep. The mother will oversee the clearing away, the washing, the preparation for the next day. The children will lay out their bedding on the floor, the rustle of straw mats a soft lullaby. The Ada, the untouchables, live apart in villages that are not marked on any official map, in neighborhoods that the clean and the pure pretend do not exist. Their days are spent with the reality that society prefers to forget. The butcher, his arms red to the elbow, works with a quiet efficiency, transforming a slaughtered animal into meat that others will cook and eat without ever acknowledging his existence. The leather worker tans hides, his hands stained dark, the smell of his trade clinging to him like a curse. The executioner, a figure of ultimate dread, lives in a space of profound isolation. He performs his duty, a clean stroke or a slow, agonizing death, and returns to his home, where his family knows not to ask about his day. Their children play together, their laughter just as bright, their games just as innocent, but their world is a small one, bounded by the prejudice of those who need them and revile them in equal measure. At night, their fires flicker in the hollows and on the edges, a separate constellation of light, a reminder that every society has its shadows, its necessary ghosts who do the work that keeps the system clean and the hands of the righteous free of blood. The night deepens. In the fields, the farmer's wife wakes to the sound of her own baby stirring, a thin cry in the darkness. She feeds the child in the quiet, her body a warm cave of comfort in the cold, drafty hut. Her husband sleeps on, his body a dead weight of exhaustion. She does not resent his sleep. She knows what his day will bring. She lays the baby back down and listens. Outside, the wind moves through the bamboo, a dry, rustling sound like distant rain. An owl calls a soft, questioning hoot. In these hours, she is alone with her thoughts, thoughts she rarely has time for in the busy blur of daylight. She thinks of her own childhood, a memory of a festival, a bright ribbon in her hair. She thinks of her mother, gone now, buried in the small cemetery on the hill. She thinks of the rice, of the tax, of whether there will be enough to last the winter. These thoughts drift through her mind, heavy and slow, like clouds crossing the moon. There is no conclusion to them, no solution. They are just the weight of a life, present and acknowledged, before sleep takes her again. In the town, a merchant lies awake, his mind a different kind of field, planted with numbers and debts and opportunities. A shipment of silk has been delayed. A rival has lowered his prices. A minor official has hinted that a gift would smooth the way for a new license. He turns these problems over in his mind, calculating, weighing, planning. Beside him, his wife sleeps, her breath soft and even. He does not wake her. His worries are his own. The world of commerce is a quiet war, fought with ledgers and bows and carefully chosen gifts. He has no sword, no armor, no code of honor to guide him. He has only his wits and his patience. He thinks of his son, a bright boy who will inherit this invisible battlefield. He hopes the boy is clever enough to win, or at least clever enough to survive. The oil lamp has burned low, the flame a tiny, flickering point in the vast darkness. He watches it for a long moment, then turns on his side and closes his eyes. The calculations will still be there in the morning. In the samurai district, a different kind of wakefulness holds sway. A young retainer sits in his small, bare room, a single candle casting long shadows on the wall. He is writing a letter, a task that requires his complete concentration. The brush must be held just so. The ink must be the perfect consistency. The characters must flow with a grace that reflects his inner spirit. He is writing to his father, a formal letter of respect and duty, reporting on his progress in his training and his service to the Lord. Every phrase is chosen with care, every sentiment expressed in the proper, time-honored form. There is no room for personal feeling here, no space for the loneliness or the doubt that sometimes creeps into his heart. The letter is a performance, a reflection of the man he is supposed to be, not the man he is. When it is finished, he reads it over, his face impassive. It is correct. It is proper. He seals it and sets it aside. He will not sleep yet. He will sit in the silence, his mind slowly emptying, preparing for another day of bows and training and the constant, crushing weight of perfection. The night is not a single, uniform thing. It changes as it deepens. The hours after midnight have a different quality than those before. The air grows colder, the silence more profound. The sounds of the village, the creak of a shutter, the bark of a dog, the distant murmur of the river, seem to happen in a different, more isolated space. A watchman makes his rounds. His wooden clappers a lonely, rhythmic sound that echoes off the dark walls of the sleeping houses. He calls out the hour and the weather, his voice a small, human thread in the vast tapestry of the night. All is well. He might call, but his voice is a question as much as a statement, a seeking of reassurance in the deep dark. In the fields, the frost begins to form, a silent, crystalline blanket that will turn the world white by dawn. The farmer will wake to it, his bones aching, and he will know that the day will be hard, the ground stiff and cold beneath his feet. But for now, there is only the slow, silent work of the frost, the stars wheeling overhead, and the deep, oblivious sleep of those whose labor has earned them this brief, dreamless peace. The first hint of light is not a color but a lessening of the dark. The black of the sky turns to a deep, bruised blue. The stars, one by one, begin to fade, their light swallowed by the approaching day. In a peasant's hut, a rooster crows, a harsh, insistent sound that shatters the last remnants of sleep. the farmer opens his eyes. For a single, blessed moment, he does not know where he is, does not feel the weight of his life. Then it returns, the cold, the ache, the knowledge of the fields waiting for him. He sits up, his joints protesting. Beside him, his wife is already stirring, her hand reaching for the baby, her mind already running through the day's endless list of tasks. There is no time for lingering, no space for greeting the dawn with gratitude. There is only the slow, painful process of rising, of moving from the warmth of sleep into the cold reality of another day. The door slides open, and the gray light of morning spills into the room, revealing the packed earth floor, the simple clay pots, the patient, uncomplaining faces of a family beginning again. In the samurai's home, the morning is a quieter, more controlled affair. A servant has already been up for an hour, preparing the bath, laying out the clothes. The samurai wakes to the sound of water being poured, a gentle, rhythmic sound that is as much a part of his morning as the light itself. He lies still for a moment, his mind clear and focused. He reviews the day ahead, the appointments, the duties, the potential challenges. There is no anxiety in this review, only a calm, methodical preparation. He rises, his movements precise and economical. He bathes in the wooden tub, the water hot and soothing, a brief luxury before the day's demands. As he dresses, his wife enters the room, her movements as silent and precise as his own. She helps him with the final layers, adjusting a fold, smoothing a sleeve. They do not speak. There is no need. The ritual is a language in itself, a shared understanding of duty and order. He looks at himself in a polished metal mirror, his face a composed mask. The private man, with his private thoughts and private fears, is gone, replaced by the samurai, the warrior, the servant of the clan. He steps out of the room, his sandals making a soft sound on the wooden floor, and walks into the new day, his shadow long and sharp in the low morning light. The village is fully awake now. Smoke rises from every roof, 100 thin columns of gray against the brightening sky. The sound of labor fills the air, the rhythmic thump of a rice mortar, the clatter of looms from the weaver's house, the shouts of children being sent on errands. The merchant is at his stall, his wares neatly arranged, his face arranged in a mask of pleasant, humble readiness. The artisan is at his bench, his tools laid out in a precise order, his mind already deep in the problems of his craft. The farmer is back in the mud, his body already bent to its task, his mind a blank space of repetitive movement. The day is young, but it already feels old, already feels like the long, slow climb toward evening. And yet, within this weight, this relentless routine, there is a kind of peace, a strange comfort in knowing exactly what is expected, in being a part of something larger, older, and utterly inescapable. The morning light grows stronger, the shadows shorten, and the long, slow wheel of the day turns onward. The sun climbs higher, its light now falling directly into the narrow spaces between buildings, onto the dusty paths, onto the backs of those who have been working since before it rose. A samurai walks through the village, his presence a quiet disturbance. The farmers in the fields do not look up, but their bodies tense, their movements becoming, if possible, even more focused on the task at hand. The merchant at his stall bows deeply, his eyes on the ground, holding the position until the sound of footsteps has passed. The samurai does not acknowledge the bow. He does not need to. His gaze is fixed ahead, on some distant point, some matter of honor or duty that has brought him down from the castle and into this world of mud and labor. He is a visitor here, a figure from another realm, and his passage leaves a wake of silence that slowly fills again with the ordinary sounds of the village going about its business. The heat of the day settles over the rice paddies like a heavy cloth. The air becomes thick, humid, filled with the buzzing of insects and the croaking of frogs hidden in the muddy water. The farmer pauses, wipes his forehead with the back of his hand, and looks toward the small shelter at the edge of the field where his wife has left a clay pot of water. The walk to the shelter takes only a minute, but in that minute, the sun beats down on him with an intensity that makes his head swim. He drinks slowly, the water warm and tasting faintly of the clay. He sits in the shade for a moment, not long enough to rest, just long enough to remember what rest feels like. A dragonfly lands on the edge of the pot, its wings a shimmer of iridescent light. He watches it for a moment, his mind empty of everything except the delicate, trembling beauty of the insect. Then it is gone, and he is walking back to the field, back to the mud, back to the slow, eternal rhythm of the work. In the castle, the coolness of stone and deep shade offers a different kind of respite. The corridors are dim, the air still. A servant glides past, her feet silent on the polished wood, carrying a tray of food or a bundle of cloth. Behind a sliding screen, a group of retainers sit in a circle, engaged in a discussion of strategy and protocol. Their voices are low, measured, each word weighed before it is spoken. The topic is a border dispute with a neighboring clan, a matter of a few fields and a stream that has been contested for generations. The details are tedious, ancient, tangled in claims and counterclaims that go back centuries. And yet, to these men, the details are everything. A misplaced concession, a poorly worded letter, could be seen as weakness, could invite aggression, could lead to conflict. They speak of rice yields and marriage alliances, of old grievances and new opportunities. The afternoon stretches on, the light shifting slowly across the tatami mats, and the conversation continues, a quiet, endless negotiation of power and pride. The merchant's day has its own rhythm of tension and release. A customer has arrived, a woman from a prosperous farmer's family, her clothes clean and her manner confident. She examines the bolts of cloth with a practiced eye, feeling the weave, holding the fabric up to the light. The merchant watches her, his face a mask of patient helpfulness, but his mind is calculating. What can she afford? What will she choose? How low can he go on the price without seeming desperate? He mentions the quality, the durability, the fine color that will not fade. She listens, says nothing, continues her examination. Finally, she points to a bolt of indigo cotton, a practical choice, good for work clothes. The merchant names a price a little higher than he expects to get. She counters a little lower than she expects to pay. They go back and forth, a quiet dance of offers and refusals. Their voices calm, their faces pleasant. They settle on a price somewhere in the middle. The woman counts out the coins from a small cloth purse, and the merchant wraps the cloth in paper, his movements neat and efficient. The transaction is complete. They bow to each other, a small exchange of respect between buyer and seller, and the woman leaves, the package tucked under her arm. The merchant watches her go, then turns back to his stall, his mind already moving to the next customer, the next negotiation, the next small victory in the quiet war of commerce. The afternoon deepens, the shadows growing longer, the light taking on a golden quality that softens the edges of the world. In a quiet corner of the village, an old woman sits on a low stool, weaving. Her hands move with a speed and precision that seems automatic, the shuttle passing back and forth through the warp threads, building the cloth row by row. Her eyes are half closed, her face lined with the years. She has been weaving since she was a child, taught by her mother, who was taught by hers. The patterns she weaves are old, older than anyone can remember, patterns that tell stories, that carry meaning, that connect the present to a past that exists only in memory and thread. A small child sits at her feet, watching, learning in the only way that matters, through silence and observation. The old woman does not speak to the child. There is no need. The lesson is in the movement, in the rhythm, in the quiet, patient work of creating something useful and beautiful from a pile of loose threads. The sun moves lower, the shadows stretch longer, and the weaving continues, a small, steady pulse of tradition in the slow drift of the afternoon. A group of children run through the village, their laughter a bright, brief flare of sound. They are playing a game, chasing one another between the houses, their bare feet kicking up small puffs of dust. A mother calls out a warning. A father glances up from his work and smiles. A small, private expression that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. The children are the only ones in this world who seem truly free, their lives not yet fully claimed by the weight of duty and expectation. They do not know that this freedom is temporary, that the roles waiting for them are already assigned, that their laughter will one day be replaced by the silence of respect and the slow, patient language of labor. For now, they are simply children, running, shouting, living in the bright, endless moment of the afternoon. Their game takes them past the edge of the village, past the last houses, to where the path leads into the forest. They stop at the tree line, their laughter fading, their eyes wide. The forest is dark, mysterious, a place of spirits and stories, a place where children do not go. They stand there for a long moment, looking into the shadows, then turn and run back to the village, their fear a small, thrilling counterpoint to the safety of the known world. The sun touches the horizon, and the world begins its slow shift toward evening. The light changes, becoming softer, redder, casting long, distorted shadows that stretch across the fields and up the sides of buildings. The farmer straightens his back for the last time, looking at the day's work, a small, measurable progress in the vast, endless task of survival. He gathers his tools, his body moving with the stiffness of deep fatigue, and begins the slow walk home. The path is crowded now with others like him, a silent procession of tired bodies moving toward the smell of cooking fires and the promise of rest. They do not speak. There is nothing to say that has not already been said in the shared silence of the day. They walk, their steps slow, their heads bowed, a line of dark shapes against the reddening sky. In the castle, the evening rituals begin. Screens are slid shut, lanterns are lit, the soft glow of paper and flame replacing the fading daylight. The Lord holds audience in a dimmer room now, the shadows adding a layer of formality, of mystery, to the proceedings. A retainer reads a report by the light of a single candle, his voice a low monotone. The Lord listens, his face unreadable, his eyes half closed. The business of the day is being concluded, the small decisions filed away, the larger ones set aside for tomorrow's consideration. Outside the room, in the corridors, servants move with even greater silence than before, their presence a whisper of cloth and soft footsteps. The castle settles into its nightly stillness, a great, complex organism slowly powering down, preparing for the long, quiet hours of darkness. Back in the village, the evening meal is a repetition of the morning's ritual, but with a different quality. The light is softer, the sounds are muted, and the exhaustion of the day hangs in the air like a visible presence. The farmer eats his rice and soup, his movements slow, automatic. His children eat beside him, their earlier energy drained away by the long afternoon. His wife serves, then sits, her own bowl in her hands, her gaze distant. They do not talk about the day. They do not need to. The day is present in every ache, in every tired breath, in the simple, profound fact of being here, together, at the end of it. A neighbor stops by, a brief word about tomorrow's work, a shared pipe of tobacco smoked in silence on the doorstep. Then he is gone, and the family begins the slow process of preparing for sleep. Bedding is laid out, the fire is banked, the door is slid shut. The darkness inside the hut is complete, absolute, a small private night within the larger night outside. One by one they sleep. The night is not silent. It is filled with small sounds, the creak of wood, the rustle of thatch, the distant bark of a fox, the soft, endless murmur of the river. A dog barks, then stops. An owl calls, a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. In a house near the edge of the village, a young woman lies awake. She is not yet married, a fact that weighs on her parents and, in quieter moments, on her. She has seen the man they have chosen for her, a farmer from a neighboring village, a good man, they say, hard-working, respectable. She has no feelings about him one way or another. He is simply a fact, like the coming of winter or the payment of taxes. She thinks about her life, about the small, contained world of this village, about the path that lies ahead of her, a path she did not choose and cannot change. There is no rebellion in these thoughts, no anger, only a quiet, patient acceptance, a recognition that this is simply how things are. The owl calls again, and she listens to it, her mind empty, her body still, until sleep finally, gently, takes her. Far from the village, deep in the forest, a different kind of life stirs. The deer move through the moonlit clearings, their steps careful, their ears twitching at every sound. The boar root in the soft earth of the forest floor, their grunts a low, guttural murmur. In the darkness, the boundaries between the human world and the wild world are thin, permeable. The spirits of the forest, the kami that dwell in ancient trees and rushing streams, are said to walk in these hours, to watch with eyes that are not quite eyes, to move with bodies that are not quite flesh. A hunter, returning late from his traps, feels their presence in the hair that rises on the back of his neck, in the sudden, profound silence that falls over the woods. He walks faster, his heart beating a quick, insistent rhythm against his ribs. He does not look back. He does not want to see what might be following him. He reaches the edge of the village, the first weak light of a cooking fire visible through the trees, and the fear lifts, replaced by the simple, solid relief of being home. The hours of deep night pass slowly, a long, dark river of time. The stars will overhead, their patterns unchanging, their light ancient and cold. In the castle, the Lord dreams of battles long past, of ancestors whose names he carries like a weight. In the village, the farmer dreams of rice, of endless fields of it, waving in the wind. In the merchant's house, the merchant dreams of coins, of ledgers filled with profit, of a future slightly easier than the present. And in the small, dark huts of the Ada, the outcasts dream, too, dreams that no one will ever record, dreams that vanish with the morning light, leaving only the faintest trace, like the memory of a forgotten song. Before dawn, the world holds its breath. It is the deepest dark, the coldest hour, the moment when night seems most permanent, most endless. And yet, even in this depth, there is a subtle shift, a barely perceptible lightening of the sky in the east, a hint that the wheel is turning, that the long, slow cycle is beginning again. In 1,000 homes, 1,000 sleepers stir, their bodies sensing the change before their minds can grasp it. The roosters, in their dark coops, shift on their perches, their internal clocks telling them that the moment is near. The dogs, curled in the dirt, lift their heads, their ears pricking at sounds too faint for human hearing. The world is poised on the edge of waking, balanced between the peace of night and the labor of day. It is a moment of perfect stillness, of absolute potential. Then, somewhere, a bird sings a single tentative note, and the moment passes. The light returns, slow and gray, The shapes of the village emerge from the darkness, first as suggestions, then as solid forms. The smoke begins to rise. The sounds begin to accumulate, the small, cumulative noises of a world coming back to life. The farmer wakes to the cold and the ache. The samurai wakes to the sound of water and the weight of silk. The merchant wakes to the calculations and the competition. The day is new, but it is also old, a repetition of all the days that have come before, a preview of all the days that will follow. There is no surprise in this morning, no novelty. There is only the routine, the ritual, the endless patient work of being exactly where one is supposed to be, doing exactly what one is supposed to do. The sun clears the horizon, its light flooding the land, touching everything with the same impartial warmth. The fields, the castle, the village, the forest, all are bathed in the same golden glow, and the people, in their separate spheres, in their separate roles, begin again. A messenger arrives in the village as the morning work is getting underway. He is a young man, not a samurai, but a servant from the castle, his clothes dusty from the road. He goes directly to the headman's house, and the village watches, a ripple of curiosity and apprehension spreading through the community. The headman emerges, his face grave, and the two men speak in low tones. The message is about taxes, about a new assessment, about an increase that will strain the already thin resources of the village. The headman listens, nods, says nothing. When the messenger leaves, the headman stands for a long moment in front of his house, looking out over the village, at the people working in the fields, at the children playing in the dirt, at the thin columns of smoke rising from the cooking fires. He feels the weight of his position more heavily than usual. He will have to tell them. He will have to find a way to explain, to justify, to ask for more from people who have nothing left to give. He turns and goes back inside, the door sliding shut behind him, and the village waits, the morning's work continuing in a silence that is heavier, more anxious than before. The day proceeds, but the knowledge of the tax increase spreads like a stain. Conversations are quieter. Faces are more drawn. The farmer in the field works with a new edge to his movements, a desperation that was not there yesterday. The extra rice he was hoping to keep for his family, the small margin of safety he had counted on, it is already gone, claimed by a decision made in a distant room by men who have never held a hoe. His wife, bringing his midday water, sees it in his posture, in the set of his shoulders. She does not ask. She does not need to. She places the pot beside him and walks away, her own steps heavy with the same knowledge. The village, always a place of shared burdens, feels the new weight settling onto every shoulder, a common grief that binds them even as it crushes them. In the castle, the decision is abstract, a number on a page, a necessary adjustment to the flow of resources. The lord who approved it does not think of the individual farmers, of their families, of the meals that will not be eaten, of the children who will go to bed hungry. He thinks of the clan, of its needs, of its position relative to other clans. The tax is not a cruelty. It is a calculation. It is the mathematics of power. His advisors nod their agreement, pleased with the efficiency of the solution. The matter is closed. The conversation moves on to other topics, other calculations, other numbers on other pages. The world of the castle and the world of the village are close enough to touch, separated by only a few miles of road and forest, and yet they are utterly, completely different, two realities that barely intersect, two ways of being that share a language but no common understanding. The afternoon brings clouds, a slow, gray accumulation that builds on the horizon and moves steadily toward the village. The light fades, the air grows heavy, and the first fat drops of rain begin to fall. The farmer looks up, a brief, unreadable expression crossing his face. Rain means rest, or at least a different kind of work. He gathers his tools and heads for the shelter, joining the others who are already huddled under the thatched roof, watching the curtain of water sweep across the fields. The rain is loud on the roof, a steady, drumming sound that fills the space and makes conversation difficult. They sit in silence, the men of the village, watching the water transform their world into something blurred and gray. A few of them smoke, the small glow of their pipes a warm point in the dimness. Others simply stare, their minds empty, their bodies grateful for the unexpected pause. The rain continues, steady and patient, a reminder that some forces are beyond any lord's control, beyond any tax collector's reach. For a little while, they are all equal, united in their shared shelter from the storm. In the castle, the rain is an inconvenience, a reason to move meetings indoors, to close the shutters against the damp. The samurai, walking between buildings, hold paper umbrellas over their heads, their movements careful, their robes held clear of the puddles. The sound of rain on the roofs is a constant background murmur, a soft, persistent presence that seeps into the stone and wood. A young woman, a lady-in-waiting to the Lord's wife, pauses at a window, looking out at the gray garden, at the raindrops falling on the surface of the ornamental pond. She thinks of nothing in particular, her mind as gray and quiet as the day. She has been here for 3 years, in this castle, serving, waiting, her life a series of small, precise tasks. She does not know what she is waiting for. A marriage, perhaps, a change of assignment, or simply for the years to pass, one after another, like these raindrops falling on the pond, each one a small, vanishing moment in a life that feels, at times, like a long, slow dream. The rain continues to fall. She turns from the window and returns to her duties. The rain stops as suddenly as it began. The clouds part, and the late afternoon sun breaks through, turning every wet surface into a mirror of golden light. The world is washed, renewed, the air clean and cool. The farmers emerge from their shelters, their eyes blinking in the sudden brightness. The fields are too wet to work, the mud too deep, so they turn to other tasks, repairing tools, mending fences, the small, necessary jobs that accumulate in the margins of their days. The village is filled with the sound of dripping water, a soft, percussive music that slowly fades as the evening approaches. The children find new puddles to splash in, their laughter a bright, defiant sound in the quiet aftermath of the storm. The evening meal is simpler than usual, the fire slow to catch after the dampness. The farmer and his family eat in the dimness of their hut, the smell of wet earth and wet straw filling the air. The conversation, what little there is about the rain, about how much it will help the rice, about the hope it brings for a better harvest, a hope that exists alongside the knowledge of the increased tax, a hope that is already tinged with resignation. The rain is a gift, but it is a gift that will be taken away, transformed into coins for the Lord's treasury, into silk for his wife, into swords for his soldiers. This is not a thought that is spoken. It is simply there, a presence in the room as real as the smoke from the fire, as the hunger in their bellies, as the love they feel for one another, a love that is also a form of survival. The night returns as it always does. The village settles into its darkness, its small sounds, its quiet dreams. The castle settles into its own, more formal darkness, its corridors empty, its rooms still. The forest, beyond both, settles into the deep, wild darkness that has never known a human light. The cycle is complete, and it is also just beginning. Tomorrow will be the same and different. The work will continue. The taxes will be paid. The bows will be made. The rice will be planted and harvested and eaten. The children will grow and take their places in the same cycle, the same endless, patient rotation of light and dark, labor and rest, life and the quiet, steady approach of death. And through it all, the narration continues, a voice without a body, a presence without a form, watching, describing, never judging, never concluding. The words flow on, a river of sound in the darkness, carrying the listener through the hours, through the centuries, through the slow, deep currents of a world that is both distant and familiar, strange and utterly, completely human. The night deepens, the stars wheel, and the story, such as it is, continues without end. The night passes, and a new day begins, not as a fresh start but as a continuation of the same slow turning. The light returns to the village, to the castle, to the forest, and the people rise not with hope or dread but with the simple, unexamined acceptance that this is what mornings are for. The farmer's wife builds the fire, her movements the same as yesterday, the same as they will be tomorrow. The samurai's servant pours the water for his bath, the temperature precisely as it has always been. The merchant slides open his shutters, revealing the same street, the same potential customers, the same long hours of waiting and watching. There is no novelty in this dawn, only the steady, reassuring presence of routine, the familiar shape of a life that has been lived this way for generations and will continue to be lived this way for generations to come. In the fields, the work has changed with the season. The rice is taller now, a deep, vibrant green that spreads across the paddies like a living carpet. The farmer no longer plants, he tends. He walks the narrow ridges between the flooded fields, checking for pests, for signs of disease, for any threat to the crop that represents his family's survival for the coming year. His eyes are trained to notice the smallest irregularity, a yellowing leaf, a cluster of eggs on the underside of a stalk, the telltale droppings of a hungry insect. He bends, he examines, he makes small adjustments, pulling a weed here, adjusting the flow of water there. It is delicate work, patient work, the work of a man who understands that his fate is written in the slow, green growth of these slender plants. The sun is warm on his back, not yet the brutal heat of high summer, but a gentle, persistent warmth that encourages growth and, with it, the slow accumulation of hope. A group of travelers passes on the road that skirts the village. They are pilgrims, their clothes dusty, their faces weathered by days of walking. They carry small bundles and wooden staffs, and they move with the slow, determined pace of those who have a destination but no urgency to reach it. The village children stop their play to watch, their eyes wide with curiosity. The travelers are from another world, another part of this same land, and their presence is a reminder that the village, for all its self-contained wholeness, is not the whole world. The headman comes out to greet them, offering water and a place to rest in the shade of a large tree near the edge of the village. They accept with gratitude, sitting in a loose circle, their legs stretched out before them, their faces turned toward the shade. They speak of the shrine they are traveling to, a famous place in the mountains, known for miracles and healing. The villagers listen, their own world of rice and taxes suddenly seeming small, contained, a single note in a much larger song. After an hour, the pilgrims rise, thank the headman, and continue on their way, their figures slowly shrinking in the distance until they are just small, moving dots on the ribbon of road. In the castle, the lord receives a visitor, a representative from a neighboring domain, a man with a carefully neutral face and a gift of fine horses. The meeting is formal, ritualized, every word and gesture freighted with meaning. They sit facing each other across a wide expanse of tatami, the gift horses displayed in the courtyard below, visible through the open screens. Tea is served, the ceremony precise and unhurried. They speak of the weather, of the health of their families, of nothing that matters, all the while watching each other with the intensity of hunters studying their prey. The real conversation, the one about borders and alliances and the shifting balance of power, happens in the spaces between words, in the slight pause before an answer, in the direction of a glance. When the visitor finally leaves, bowing deeply at the gate, the lord retires to his private chambers and sits for a long time in silence, his face unreadable, his thoughts known only to himself. The horses remain in the courtyard, beautiful, useless, a symbol of something that may or may not prove valuable in the months to come. The merchant's day brings an unexpected opportunity. A samurai's servant appears at his stall, not to buy, but to deliver a message. The samurai's wife requires a particular fabric for a ceremonial occasion, a fabric of a specific color and weave, one that the merchant does not currently have in stock. But he knows where it can be obtained, from a supplier in a larger town, a day's journey away. This is a chance, not just for a sale, but for a connection, a small thread of obligation that might, in time, weave itself into something more substantial. The merchant accepts the commission with a deep bow, his mind already calculating the cost, the time, the potential profit, and the greater, incalculable value of being known to a samurai household. He will leave tomorrow, traveling with a single servant, his wares packed carefully in a wooden box. It is a risk, a journey into a world where he has no standing, no protection beyond his own wits and the slim authority of a commission. But it is also an opportunity, and in the quiet war of commerce, opportunities must be seized. The day passes, and the afternoon brings a different kind of visitor to the village. A group of men, not travelers, not pilgrims, but officials from the castle, accompanied by 2 samurai. They come to measure, to assess, to prepare for the coming tax collection. The headman meets them at the edge of the village, his bow deep, his face a mask of respectful welcome. Inside, he is calculating too, but his calculations are of a different kind. How much can be hidden? How much must be given? How can he protect his people from the full weight of the Lord's demand? He leads the officials through the village, through the fields, his voice steady as he answers their questions, his eyes missing nothing, the small signs of prosperity that must be downplayed, the signs of hardship that must be emphasized. The farmers work on, their faces carefully blank, their bodies bent to their tasks, but their ears are open, their hearts beating with a fear that is older than any of them, a fear that has been passed down through generations like an heirloom no one wanted. The officials stay overnight, housed in the headman's home, eating his food, drinking his sake. The headman's wife serves them in silence, her face a mask of hospitality that hides a deep, wordless resentment. Her husband sits with them, talking of crops and weather, his laughter a little too loud, his manner a little too eager. The officials are polite, distant, their true purpose hidden behind bland smiles and meaningless compliments. They are here to extract, to take, and the headman knows it, and they know he knows it, and the pretense of civility is a thin, fragile thing stretched over the hard reality of power. Late in the night, the headman lies awake beside his wife, staring at the dark ceiling, his mind a turmoil of numbers and fears and the faces of his neighbors, of the families who depend on him to find a way through this, as his father did before him, and his father before that. There is no solution, only mitigation, only the hope of survival, of getting through one more year, one more harvest, one more tax. The officials leave in the morning, their measurements taken, their assessments made. The village watches them go, the same silent, watchful attention that greeted their arrival. The headman stands in front of his house, his face showing nothing, his hands hanging at his sides. The farmers return to their work, but the work is different now, shadowed by the knowledge of what is coming. The tax will be heavy, perhaps too heavy. Some families will go hungry this winter. Some may not survive. This is not a tragedy, not in the way the word is usually understood. It is simply a fact, a recurring event in the cycle of village life, as predictable as the seasons, as unavoidable as the rain. The headman turns and goes inside, and the day continues, the slow, patient work of survival going on as it always has, as it always will. In the castle, the Lord reviews the tax assessments with his advisors. The numbers are discussed, adjusted, finalized. The needs of the clan are weighed against the capacity of the villages. It is a calculation, nothing more. The Lord does not think of the individual farmers, of their hunger, of their children. He thinks of his army, his treasury, his position. The advisors nod, satisfied. The assessments are approved. The orders are written, sealed, and dispatched. In a few days, the collectors will ride out, and the rice will begin its slow, one-way journey from the villages to the castle storehouses. The system works. The machine turns. And in the villages, the people wait, their lives suspended between hope and fear, between the rice they have grown and the rice they will be allowed to keep. The days pass, a slow, unremarkable succession of light and dark, work and rest. The rice grows taller, the green deepening toward the gold of harvest. The farmers watch it with a mixture of hope and anxiety, their lives bound to its slow transformation. In the castle, the preparations for harvest festivals begin. A different kind of anticipation, a celebration of abundance that has little to do with the labor that produced it. The merchant returns from his journey, the precious fabric secured, his connection to the samurai household established. He delivers it personally, bowing deeply in the courtyard, his heart beating with a pride he cannot show. The samurai's wife receives it with a brief nod, her face revealing nothing, but the merchant knows that he has taken a step, a small step, into a world that is usually closed to his kind. The nights grow longer, the air cooler. The first hints of autumn appear in the turning of the leaves, in the different quality of the light. The farmer feels it in his bones, a signal older than any calendar, a knowledge that the harvest is approaching, that the season of labor is reaching its climax, that the time of reckoning is near. He works longer hours now, driven by an urgency that has nothing to do with choice. Every moment of daylight is precious, every task essential. His wife works beside him, her hands as calloused as his, her face as lined. Their children help where they can, their small hands pulling weeds, carrying water, learning the work that will define their lives. The family is a unit, a small machine of survival, each part essential, each movement coordinated by a lifetime of shared labor. One evening, as the sun sets behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the farmer stops and looks up. He does not often do this, does not often raise his eyes from the ground, from the work. But something makes him stop, makes him look at the beauty of the sky, at the clouds catching fire, at the first faint stars appearing in the deepening blue. He stands there for a long moment, his body still, his face unreadable. His wife notices, stops her own work, and looks at him, a question in her eyes. He does not answer. He simply stands, looking at the sky, and then, after a moment, he turns and continues his work, the brief pause already forgotten, or perhaps not forgotten, but absorbed, stored away in some deep place where such moments go, where they wait, perhaps, for a winter evening, for a moment of rest, for a time when they can be remembered and held, briefly, before the next day's work begins. The harvest begins. It is the most intense time of the year, a period of days that blur into one another, of sleep that is snatched in short fragments, of work that continues from before dawn until after dark. The entire village is mobilized, every hand that can hold a sickle, every back that can bear a load. The rice is cut, bundled, dried, threshed, the grain separated from the stalk in a series of ancient, efficient movements. The air is filled with the sound of flails, with the creak of carts, with the low, rhythmic chanting of workers coordinating their efforts. Even the children have tasks, carrying water, chasing away birds, learning, through participation, the rhythms of the harvest that will define their lives. In the midst of this labor, the tax collectors arrive. They ride into the village on horses that seem enormous, their faces impassive, their presence a cold shadow falling over the feverish activity. The headman meets them, his bow deep, his face a mask of welcome that conceals a heart heavy with dread. The collectors dismount, their eyes moving over the village, over the harvested rice, over the faces of the people, calculating, assessing, taking. They set up in the headman's house, their scales precise, their records meticulous. One by one, the farmers come, bringing their rice, watching as it is weighed, watching as the Lord's share is measured and set aside, watching as what remains, the portion they will live on for the coming year, is counted and recorded. Some families have enough, some do not. The collectors are unmoved by hardship, by pleas, by the desperate faces of those who know that what they are being allowed to keep is not enough to last the winter. The law is the law. The tax is the tax. The rice is weighed, recorded, and taken. The farmer watches his rice being divided. He knows the numbers, has known them for weeks, has calculated and recalculated, hoping for a miracle, for a miscalculation, for any small mercy that might allow his family to survive. There is no miracle. The Lord's share is taken, and what remains is a small pile, a meager pile, a pile that he will have to stretch, to supplement with wild plants, with whatever he can find in the forest, with hope, which is the only crop that has never failed, though it has often been thin. He bows to the collectors, thanks them for their fairness, and carries his remaining rice back to his hut. His wife is waiting, her face a question he cannot answer. He sets the rice down, and they look at it together, this small, precious heap that represents their future. Then she turns to prepare the evening meal, and he goes to tend to the animals, and the day continues, as all days do, regardless of what has been lost or gained. The collectors leave, their horses loaded with rice, their mission complete. The village is quieter now, subdued, the energy of the harvest tempered by the reality of what has been taken. The work continues, but it is a different kind of work now, the work of storing what remains, of preparing for the winter, of calculating and recalculating, of hoping that somehow, against all evidence, it will be enough. The headman walks through the village, stopping at each house, speaking quietly with each family. He has no solutions, no hidden stores of rice, no power to change what has happened. But he can listen, he can nod, he can share the weight of this knowledge, this communal burden. It is not much, but it is something. It is what headmen have always done, what they will always do, a small, human connection in the face of a system that has no room for human feeling. The days grow shorter, the nights colder. The last of the harvest is brought in, the fields left bare and brown, waiting for the winter. The farmer repairs his tools, mends his hut, gathers firewood for the cold months ahead. His wife preserves what she can, pickling vegetables, drying fish, stretching the meager supplies as far as they will go. The children, freed from the intensity of the harvest, return to their games, their laughter a strange, bright sound in the quiet village. The merchant, his business slowed by the season, spends more time by his fire, reviewing his ledgers, planning for the spring. The samurai, his duties unchanged by the turning of the year, continues his training, his ceremonies, his endless performance of discipline and control. The castle on its hill stands against the gray sky, a monument to power, to permanence, to the unchanging order that governs all their lives. The first snow falls, a soft, silent blanket that transforms the world. The village is muffled, its sounds absorbed by the white, its sharp edges softened. The farmer wakes to a world transformed, to a light that seems to come from everywhere at once, reflected off the snow and through the paper screens. He lies still for a moment, listening to the silence, a deeper silence than usual, a silence that feels almost sacred. Then he rises, slides open the door, and looks out at the white expanse, at the roofs weighed down with snow, at the bare trees etched against the pale sky. The cold hits him, a sharp, immediate presence, and he shivers, pulling his thin robe tighter. But he does not close the door. He stands there, looking, for a long moment, at the beautiful, unforgiving world that has, for now, granted him a pause, a rest, a brief respite from the work that will resume when the snow melts and the cycle begins again. In the castle, the snow is viewed differently. It is beautiful, a picturesque addition to the carefully designed gardens, a subject for poetry, a reason to move gatherings closer to the braziers. The Lord looks out at the white landscape from the warmth of his room, a cup of heated sake in his hand, his mind on matters of state, of strategy, of the spring campaigns that are already being planned. The snow is an inconvenience, a temporary barrier to movement, but it is also an opportunity, a time of relative stillness when alliances can be considered, when letters can be written, when the slow, patient work of politics can proceed without the distraction of active conflict. He turns from the window, returns to his maps and his advisors, and the conversation continues, the winter a temporary pause in the endless game of power. The winter deepens. The snow falls and melts and falls again, the village alternately buried and revealed. The farmer spends his days in the hut, repairing tools, weaving straw sandals, doing the small, necessary tasks that accumulate in the margins of the growing season. His family huddles together for warmth, the fire burning low to conserve fuel, their conversation minimal, their thoughts turned inward. The meager rice supply is carefully rationed, each meal a calculation, a small act of survival. The children grow restless, their energy confined by the walls and the cold, their games smaller, quieter, played in the dim light of the hut. The mother tells them stories, old stories, stories her mother told her, stories of spirits and heroes and the distant past, stories that fill the long winter evenings with a different kind of light. In another part of the village, an old man dies. He has been sick for weeks, his cough a constant presence in his family's hut, his decline slow and expected. The healer came, administered herbs, offered prayers, but there was little to be done. He was old, and winter is hard on the old. His family mourns him, a quiet, private grief that does not disturb the larger rhythm of the village. The headman arranges for the funeral, for the prayers, for the small rituals that mark a life ended. The body is prepared. The grave is dug in the frozen ground. A difficult, painful task that takes most of a day. The priest comes, chants the sutras, and the old man is returned to the earth, to the cycle of life and death that is as natural, as inevitable, as the falling of the snow. The village returns to its winter quiet. The old man's family returns to their hut, to their grief, to their rationed rice, to the slow, patient work of living. The winter is not a single, uniform experience. It is a series of days, each one similar to the last, each one marked by the same cold, the same confinement, the same small routines. But within this sameness, there are variations, small differences that give each day its own character. A day of bright sun and melting snow, when the children can go outside and build a small, misshapen snow figure. A day of bitter wind, when even going to the privy is an ordeal. A day when a neighbor shares a small gift, a piece of dried fish, a cup of precious salt, a reminder that they are not alone in this, that the bonds of the village extend even into the deep cold. The farmer marks the passing of the days on a small stick, notches cut into the wood, a simple ancient calendar that tells him how long until spring, how long until the work begins again, how long until he can see, once more, the green shoots rising from the thawed earth. In the castle, the winter brings its own routines. The samurai train in the cold, their breath misting in the air, their movements as precise as ever. The women sew, their needles flashing in the dim light, creating garments for the coming year. The Lord holds court, the business of ruling continuing without pause, the petitions and disputes and decisions accumulating like the snow outside. A poet is summoned to compose verses for a New Year's celebration, his words carefully crafted to honor the Lord, to praise the season, to capture the fleeting beauty of the winter landscape. The poem is read aloud, approved, and added to the collection of such verses, a small permanent record of a single winter, a single moment, a single breath of beauty in the long, cold months. The new year arrives, marked by rituals and celebrations that cut through the winter quiet. In the village, the families clean their homes, prepare small offerings, visit the local shrine. The farmer puts on his best clothes, the ones he wears only on such occasions, and walks with his family through the snow to the small wooden shrine at the edge of the village. The priest is there, his breath visible in the cold air, his voice chanting the ancient prayers. The farmer bows, claps his hands, offers a coin and a wish for a good harvest, for health, for survival. His wife does the same. His children, their faces solemn with the importance of the moment, imitate their parents, their small hands clapping, their small wishes offered to the gods. They walk back through the snow, the world white and quiet, the new year stretching ahead of them, unknown, unpredictable, but greeted, as it must be, with hope. In the castle, the new year is a more elaborate affair. There are ceremonies, banquets, exchanges of gifts. The Lord receives his retainers, his allies, his subordinates, each one bowing in turn, each one offering the appropriate greetings and gifts. The rooms are decorated, the food is elaborate, the sake flows freely. It is a performance of unity, of prosperity, of the enduring power of the clan. The Lord sits at the center of it all, his face a mask of benevolent authority, his eyes missing nothing, the slight tensions between retainers, the carefully worded congratulations that might conceal resentment, the gifts that might be more or less than expected. The celebration continues into the night, the laughter and conversation a bright, artificial light against the cold, dark world outside. But the winter is not over. The new year brings hope, but it does not bring an end to the cold. The snow continues to fall, the rice continues to dwindle, the days continue their slow, cold procession. The farmer checks his stores, calculates and recalculates, adjusts the rations yet again. His children are thinner now, their faces paler, their games less energetic. His wife moves more slowly, her strength sapped by the constant cold and the inadequate food. He does not speak of his fears. There is no point. They all know. They all watch the rice diminish, watch the winter stretch on, watch for the first signs of spring with an intensity that is itself a kind of prayer. And then, one day, there is a change. The air feels different, softer. The snow begins to melt in earnest, running in small rivulets down the paths, gathering in pools in the low places. The farmer stands at his door, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, a warmth he had almost forgotten. He breathes deeply, the air smelling of wet earth, of something green and growing just beneath the surface. He does not smile. He is not given to smiling. But something shifts in him, a loosening of the tight knot of fear that has been his constant companion through the winter. The spring is coming. The work will begin again. And with the work, the hope, the endless, patient hope that is the only crop that has never failed them. He turns and goes back into the hut, to tell his wife, to begin the preparations, to step, once again, into the cycle that has no beginning and no end. The spring arrives not as a single moment but as a slow unfolding, a gradual softening of the world. The snow withdraws from the fields, revealing mud that steams in the morning sun. The trees along the forest edge show the faintest hint of green, a color so pale it seems more like a memory of green than the thing itself. The farmer walks his fields, his feet sinking into the soft earth, his eyes studying the condition of the ground, the level of the water, the readiness of the soil to receive the new season's seed. He carries a small wooden hoe, and every few steps he stops, digs a small hole, examines the earth, the texture, the moisture, the dark richness that will, with luck and labor, become rice. His wife is at the hut, sorting through the remaining seed rice, picking out the shriveled grains, the broken ones, the ones that will not grow. It is painstaking work, work that requires patience and attention, work that will determine, in large part, whether the coming harvest will be enough. In the castle, the spring brings a different kind of activity. The screens are opened wider, letting in the warmer air and the light. The gardens are attended to, the paths raked, the moss tended, the first early blossoms admired. The Lord receives reports from his borders, from his villages, from the network of informants and allies that keeps him informed of the shifting landscape of power. The snow's retreat has opened the roads, has made movement possible again, and with movement comes news, and with news comes the need for decisions. A border dispute that has simmered through the winter now demands resolution. A marriage alliance proposed months ago now requires a response. A minor lord on the edge of the domain has been making inquiries, testing the waters, perhaps considering a shift in allegiance. The lord listens, consults, decides. The spring is a time of renewal, but it is also a time of vigilance, of watching, of ensuring that the thaw does not reveal unexpected threats. The merchant prepares for the spring trading season. His ledgers are reviewed, his debts calculated, his plans laid out for the months ahead. The fabric he secured for the samurai's wife has brought him a small measure of recognition, a few more customers from the warrior class, a few more opportunities for the kind of quiet, profitable transactions that are the lifeblood of his trade. He will travel more this year, he decides, visiting the larger towns, establishing connections, expanding his network. His wife will manage the stall in his absence, her knowledge of the business as complete as his own, her judgment trusted implicitly. They discuss these plans in the evenings, their voices low, their calculations precise, their partnership a quiet, efficient thing built on years of shared labor and shared ambition. The farmer's son, now old enough to take on more responsibility, works beside his father in the fields. He is learning, not through instruction but through observation and imitation, the 1,000 small skills that make a farmer. How to judge the right depth for planting, how to read the sky for signs of rain, how to mend a tool with limited materials, how to work through fatigue, through hunger, through the bone-deep weariness that is simply part of the life. He does not question this future. It is as natural to him as breathing, as inevitable as the turning of the seasons. His father was a farmer, and his father before him, and his son will be a farmer too, if the gods are kind and the harvest sufficient and the taxes not too crushing. The boy works, his back bending, his hands learning, his mind elsewhere, perhaps, on the games of childhood that are already receding, on the young girl from the next village who he saw at the New Year's festival, on the small, private dreams that have no place in the mud and the labor but that persist anyway, small flowers blooming in the cracks of a life already determined. The planting begins. It is a ritual as old as the village itself, a coordinated effort that involves every able-bodied person. The fields are flooded, the water smooth and reflective, turning the valley into a vast, irregular mirror. The farmers move through the water, bent over, their hands pushing the young rice plants into the mud, row after row, the work rhythmic, repetitive, almost meditative. The women work beside the men, their movements as practiced, as efficient. The children help where they can, carrying bundles of seedlings, fetching water, learning through participation the rhythms of this ancient dance. The headman moves between the fields, offering encouragement, settling disputes, ensuring that the work proceeds smoothly. The village is alive with purpose, with the shared, unspoken understanding that this work, this planting, is the foundation of everything, the source of life itself. In the midst of the planting, a messenger arrives from the castle. He is not a tax collector this time, not a bearer of bad news. He carries a different kind of message, an invitation. The Lord requests the presence of the village headman at a ceremony, a celebration of the spring planting, a ritual that connects the work of the farmers to the authority of the Lord, that binds the village to the castle in the ancient, necessary relationship of production and protection. The headman receives the message with a deep bow, his face showing nothing of what he feels, which is a mixture of pride and apprehension, of duty and the fear of doing something wrong in that distant, formal world. He will go, of course. He will put on his best clothes, the ones he wears only for such occasions, and he will travel to the castle, and he will bow and speak and perform as he must, representing his village, his people, their labor, and their loyalty. He will stand in the presence of the Lord, and he will feel, perhaps, the vast distance between his world and that one, the gulf that separates the mud of the fields from the polished wood of the castle floors. The day of the ceremony arrives. The headman rises before dawn, dresses carefully, and begins the long walk to the castle. The road is familiar, but it feels different today, charged with a significance that makes every step feel weighted. He passes through other villages, past other fields, and he notes, with the eye of a farmer, the progress of their planting, the condition of their rice, the small signs of prosperity or struggle that are written on the land. He reaches the castle town in the late morning, the streets crowded with people, with merchants and servants and samurai, all moving with purpose, all part of the intricate machine of the Lord's domain. He makes his way to the castle gate, where he is checked, questioned, and finally admitted, his name recorded, his purpose noted. Inside, the castle is a world apart. The corridors are dim and cool, the floors polished to a high shine, the screens painted with scenes of nature, of mountains and rivers and birds in flight. The headman is led by a servant, his steps careful on the unfamiliar surface, his eyes taking in details he will remember for the rest of his life. He is brought to a large room where other headmen are already gathered. A dozen men like himself, from villages across the domain, each one dressed in his best, each one wearing the same expression of careful, respectful attention. They do not speak much, these men. They nod to one another, exchange small, quiet greetings, and then stand in silence, waiting. The ceremony begins. The Lord enters, and every head in the room bends as one. A wave of bows that moves through the space like wind through a field of grain. The Lord is dressed in elaborate robes, his face impassive, his presence filling the room without any apparent effort. He speaks, his voice carrying clearly in the silence, his words formal, ritualized, about the spring, about the planting, about the importance of the bond between Lord and people. The headman listens, his head bowed, his mind struggling to absorb the meaning of the words, the significance of the moment. He is here in this room in the presence of the Lord. It is an honor, a duty, a reminder of his place in the order of things. When the ceremony ends, there is sake, there are small gifts, there is a meal served in a different room, a meal more elaborate than anything the headman has ever eaten, the flavors strange and wonderful, the portions generous. He eats carefully, mindful of his manners, watching the other headmen, imitating their movements, their handling of the chopsticks, their careful sips of the sake. He does not want to do anything wrong, anything that might reflect badly on his village, on his people. He returns to the village as the sun is setting, The walk long, but his mind still full of the day's impressions. His family is waiting. His wife's face a question he cannot fully answer. He tells them what he can, the words inadequate to convey the experience, the strange, dreamlike quality of being in that other world. He shows them the gift he received, a small piece of silk, finer than anything they own, a tangible proof of the day's events. They touch it, their fingers gentle, their eyes wide. It will be saved, perhaps used for something special, a reminder of this day, of the headman's journey into the heart of power. The family eats their evening meal, the simple food tasting different tonight, touched by the memory of the castle's elaborate dishes. And then they sleep. The headman's dreams a confusion of polished floors and painted screens and the impassive face of the Lord. The spring advances. The rice grows, the green shoots rising from the flooded fields, delicate at first, then stronger, more substantial. The farmer tends them with the same patient attention, the same endless round of tasks. The weeds must be pulled, the water levels adjusted, the pests discouraged by whatever means are available, scarecrows and noise and the constant, watchful presence of the farmers themselves. The days grow longer, warmer, the work easier in the pleasant weather, though no less demanding. The farmer's son works beside him, his skills improving, his endurance growing, his transformation into a farmer proceeding as inevitably as the growth of the rice. In the evenings, when the work is done, the village comes alive in a different way. The families eat their meals, the doors open to the warm air, the sounds of cooking and conversation drifting between the huts. The children play in the fading light, their games extending as long as their parents will allow. The old men sit together, smoking and talking, their voices a low, continuous murmur that blends with the sounds of the evening, the insects, the birds, the distant bark of a dog. The women gather at the well or by the cooking fires, their conversation a different rhythm, faster, more varied, punctuated by laughter that is quickly suppressed, as if laughter itself is something to be careful with. The village, in these soft spring evenings, feels almost peaceful, almost free, the weight of taxes and duty and the hard work of survival momentarily lifted, or at least forgotten. The merchant returns from his travels, his pack full of new goods, his mind full of new possibilities. He has made connections, established credit, secured promises of future deliveries. His wife meets him at the door, her face showing the relief she will not put into words. They sit together in the evening, sharing the news of his journey, the news of the village in his absence. Their son, a boy of 10, listens from the corner, his eyes moving between his parents, absorbing the details of this world he will one day inherit. The merchant's life is not an easy one, but it has its rewards, its small freedoms, its moments of satisfaction. He looks at his family, at the modest prosperity of his home, and feels, perhaps, something that might be called contentment, though he would not use that word, would not allow himself the luxury of naming it. In the castle, the spring brings a different kind of activity. The Lord's eldest son, a young man of 17, is preparing for his coming-of-age ceremony. It is an elaborate affair, involving rituals and gifts and the formal recognition of his entry into adult society. The castle is abuzz with preparations, with seamstresses and calligraphers and ritual specialists all working toward the appointed day. The young man himself moves through these preparations with a careful mask of composure, but inside, he feels the weight of expectation, the knowledge that he is being prepared not just for a ceremony but for a life, for the moment when he will take his father's place, when the domain and all its people will become his responsibility. He trains harder than ever, studies longer, practices his sword work and his calligraphy with an intensity that his instructors note with approval. He is becoming what he must become, the future lord, the inheritor of centuries of tradition and obligation. The ceremony day arrives. It is a bright, Clear day. The sky a deep, perfect blue. The castle is filled with guests, with lords from neighboring domains, with important retainers, with priests and poets and officials of every rank. The young man processes through the rooms, his robes elaborate, his face a mask of solemn dignity. He receives the symbols of his new status, the sword, the scroll, the formal name that will now be his. He performs the required rituals, speaks the required words, bows at the required moments. His father watches from a position of honor, his face revealing nothing, but his heart, perhaps, stirred by this passage, by the visible evidence that the line will continue, that the clan will endure. The celebration that follows is long, elaborate, the sake flowing freely, the conversations growing louder as the day wears on. The young man endures it all, his composure never breaking, his performance of his new role already flawless. The summer arrives, bringing with it a heat that settles over the land like a heavy blanket. The rice grows tall in the fields, the green now deep and lush, the plants heavy with the developing grain. The farmer works in the early mornings and late evenings, avoiding the worst of the midday sun. But there is always work, always something that needs attention. The irrigation channels must be kept clear, the water flowing steadily to every part of every field. The weeds, encouraged by the warmth and moisture, must be pulled constantly, their removal an endless, repetitive task that occupies hours of every day. The farmer's body is lean and hard, his skin darkened by the sun, his hands calloused and scarred by years of this work. He moves through the fields with the economy of long practice, each motion efficient, each step purposeful. The heat affects everyone. In the village, the pace of life slows, the midday hours given over to rest in whatever shade can be found. The children seek the cool of the stream, their splashing a constant, joyful sound that carries across the fields. The old men doze in the shade of the large tree at the village center, their pipes cold beside them, their dreams a mix of memory and heat. The women work indoors when they can, the thick walls of the huts offering some protection from the worst of the sun. Even the animals are sluggish, the dogs lying in whatever shade they can find, their tongues hanging, their breathing labored. In the castle, the heat is managed with screens and breezes and the careful placement of rooms. The lord conducts his business in the coolest chambers, his advisors fanning themselves discreetly, their robes loosened slightly, though the forms of propriety are maintained as much as possible. The ladies of the court retreat to the gardens in the evenings, when the heat has lessened, walking among the carefully arranged rocks and water, their fans moving in a constant rhythmic motion. The young lord, now fully installed in his new role, studies the administration of the domain, learning the names of villages, the amounts of taxes, the complex web of obligations and alliances that he will one day manage. The heat is an inconvenience, nothing more, a seasonal discomfort that will pass, as all things pass. The summer brings storms. Dark clouds gather on the horizon, building through the afternoon until they tower over the land, their tops white and luminous, their bases dark with rain. The farmer watches them with a mixture of hope and fear. Rain is necessary, but too much rain, too violent a storm, can flatten the rice, can wash away the precious soil, can destroy in minutes the work of months. He checks the drainage channels, reinforces the vulnerable sections of the paddies, prepares as much as anyone can prepare for the whims of the sky. The storm arrives with wind and thunder and rain that falls in sheets, obscuring the world beyond a few feet. The family huddles in the hut, the sound of the storm overwhelming, the walls shaking with each thunderclap. The farmer's wife holds the youngest child close, her face calm but her eyes betraying her fear. The farmer stands at the door, watching the storm, his face unreadable, his thoughts on the rice, on the fields, on the work that may be undone in a single violent hour. The storm passes as all storms do. The rain stops, the wind dies, the thunder fades into the distance. The farmer steps outside into a world washed clean, the air fresh and cool, the ground steaming in the sudden return of the sun. He walks to the fields, his heart beating with the fear of what he might find. The rice is bent, some of it flattened, but most of it is still standing, still alive, already beginning to straighten in the aftermath of the storm. He breathes, a long, slow exhalation of relief. The damage is not as bad as it might have been. Some fields have lost soil, some plants have been broken, but the majority have survived. He begins the work of repair, of propping up the fallen stalks, of clearing the blocked channels, of assessing the full extent of what has been lost. The work will take days, but it is work he knows, work he can do, work that is simply another part of the endless cycle of loss and recovery that defines his life. The summer continues, a succession of hot days and warm nights, of work and rest, of growth and the patient waiting for the harvest. The rice ripens, the grains swelling, the heads of the plants bending with their weight. The farmer walks among them, touching them, feeling the hardness of the grain, judging the exact moment when they will be ready. It is a knowledge that cannot be taught, cannot be written down, a knowledge that lives in the hands and the eyes and the accumulated experience of a lifetime. He knows when the harvest will begin, not by a calendar, but by a feeling, a certainty that settles into his bones as the days pass and the rice transforms. The village prepares for the harvest. Tools are repaired, storage areas are cleaned, arrangements are made for the coordinated effort that will soon consume every waking moment. The headman moves from house to house, confirming the plans, ensuring that everyone knows their role, that nothing has been overlooked. The anticipation is palpable, a tension that underlies all the ordinary activities of the village. The harvest is the climax of the year, the moment when all the work, all the hope, all the fear of the past months is finally realized, for good or ill. The farmers go about their tasks with a new intensity, their minds already on the coming days, their bodies preparing for the labor that awaits. And then, one morning, the farmer rises before dawn, looks at the sky, and knows, today is the day. He wakes his family, and they prepare in the dim light, eating a quick meal, gathering their tools. They walk to the fields as the sun rises, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The other families are doing the same, a silent procession converging on the paddies. The headman stands at the edge of the first field, his sickle in his hand. He looks at the gathered people, at the faces he has known all his life, at the children who will carry on this work when he is gone. He does not speak. There is no need. He raises his sickle and then he bends and the first cut is made. The harvest has begun. The harvest continues day after day, the rhythm of cutting and binding and stacking flowing like a current that carries the entire village with it. The sun rises and sets, and the work continues, the boundaries between days blurring into a single, extended moment of labor. The farmer's hands move without thought, the sickle an extension of his arm, the rice stalks falling in neat rows behind him. His wife follows, gathering the cut stalks, binding them into sheaves. His son carries the sheaves to the drying racks, his young legs moving quickly despite the fatigue that weighs on all of them. Even the youngest child has a task, bringing water, chasing away the birds that gather hopefully at the edges of the fields. The family works as a single organism, each part essential, each movement coordinated by a lifetime of shared labor. The drying racks rise across the village, rows of rice sheaves hanging like golden banners against the sky. The farmers watch the weather with an intensity that borders on obsession, praying for sun, for wind, for the dry conditions that will properly cure the grain. A sudden rain could ruin weeks of work, could rot the rice where it hangs, could turn the promise of survival into the certainty of hunger. The headman consults the sky constantly, reading the clouds, the wind, the behavior of the birds, all the small signs that his ancestors have read for generations. At the first hint of rain, the village mobilizes, covering the racks, moving the sheaves to whatever shelter can be found. A frantic dance with the weather that repeats itself throughout the drying period. In the castle, the harvest is a different kind of concern. The Lord reviews reports from his villages, the numbers beginning to accumulate, the estimates of yield that will determine the domain's prosperity for the coming year. His advisors calculate and project, their abacus beads clicking in the quiet rooms. The tax collectors prepare for their rounds, their scales and records ready, their horses waiting. The Lord's mind moves across his domain, from village to village, from field to field, seeing not the individual farmers and their families, but the aggregate, the total, the rice that will fill his storehouses and feed his warriors and support his position in the endless negotiation of power. The harvest is a time of satisfaction, of confirmation, of the visible evidence that the system works, that the order he maintains produces the abundance that sustains it. The merchant, too, watches the harvest with a calculating eye. A good harvest means more coins in the pockets of the farmers, more business for his stall, more opportunities for trade. A poor harvest means hardship, means farmers with nothing to spare, means a long, lean winter for everyone, including him. He adjusts his plans accordingly, ordering less inventory, extending less credit, preparing for the possibility of scarcity. His wife continues to manage the stall, her observations of the village's mood adding to their collective intelligence about the season's true outcome. They speak in low tones at night, reviewing the signs, making their small adjustments, navigating the uncertainty that is the permanent condition of their lives. The threshing begins. The dried rice is beaten, flailed, separated from the stalks in a process that fills the air with chaff and the rhythmic sound of impact. The grain is gathered, winnowed, the chaff blown away by the wind or by the careful blowing of the farmers themselves. What remains is the treasure, the golden grains that represent survival, that will be measured and divided and stored and eaten, that will become the meals of the coming year. The farmers work with a new intensity now, the end in sight, the reward for all their labor finally taking tangible form. The piles of grain grow, measured in baskets, in bags, in the ancient units that have been used for centuries. Each farmer knows, with a precision that requires no calculation, exactly how much his family has produced, exactly how much will be taken, exactly how much will remain. The tax collectors arrive, as they always do, their timing as predictable as the harvest itself. They ride into the village, their faces familiar now, their presence a cold shadow that falls over the accumulated grain. The headman meets them, his bow deep, his welcome formal, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what is coming. The collectors set up in the same place, their scales and records prepared. One by one, the farmers come, bringing their rice, watching as it is weighed, watching as the Lord's share is measured and set aside, watching as what remains is counted and recorded. The scene repeats itself, a ritual as old as the village, as old as the relationship between those who work the land and those who claim its fruits. The farmer brings his rice. He has calculated and recalculated, has hoped and feared, has done everything within his power to maximize his yield and minimize his loss. He watches as the collector's scale tips, as the rice is poured into the official measures, as the numbers are recorded in the official books. The Lord's share is taken, a substantial portion, a portion that represents months of labor, of hope, of fear. What remains is placed before him, a pile of grain that he will carry back to his hut, that he will ration through the winter, that he will supplement with whatever he can find or trade or do without. He looks at it, this small pile, and he knows that it will not be enough. Not quite. Not unless the winter is mild, unless the wild vegetables are plentiful, unless he can find work for coins somewhere, unless some small mercy intervenes. He bows to the collectors, thanks them for their fairness, and carries his rice home. His wife is waiting. She looks at the pile he sets before her, and her face does not change. She has known, has always known, has prepared herself for this moment through the long months of the growing season. She begins to calculate, to divide, to plan. The rice will be stretched, eked out, measured by the handful for each meal. The pickled vegetables will be rationed. The dried fish will be saved for special occasions. They will gather more wild plants, hunt more small game, tighten their belts and hope. It is not a new experience. They have done this before, will do it again. It is simply the shape of their lives, the pattern into which they were born and in which they will die. She begins to prepare the evening meal using the rice from last year's stores, the last of it, because the new rice must be saved, must be made to last. The farmer sits by the fire, his body exhausted, his mind empty, his eyes on the flames. His son sits beside him, silent, watching, learning. The days grow shorter, the air cooler. The harvest is complete, the fields bare, the village quiet with the exhaustion of the season's final labor. The farmers rest, their bodies grateful for the pause, their minds already turning toward the winter, toward the repairs and preparations that will occupy the cold months. The headman moves through the village, checking on the most vulnerable families, those with the smallest stores, the sickest members, the least ability to survive a hard winter. He has no solutions, no hidden resources, but he can offer his presence, his concern, his willingness to listen and to witness. It is not nothing. In a world of scarce resources, human connection is itself a kind of wealth, a currency that does not fill bellies but that sustains something else, something harder to name, something that makes the struggle worthwhile. The first frost comes, a white blanket that covers the ground in the early morning, that crunches underfoot, that signals the final transition from autumn to winter. The farmer wakes to cold, to the familiar ache in his joints, to the knowledge that the season of rest has truly begun. He lies in his bedding for a long moment, listening to the silence, to the absence of the sounds of growth and labor that have filled the warmer months. The hut is cold, the fire low, his family still sleeping around him. He rises, carefully, quietly, and adds fuel to the fire, coaxing the flames back to life. The warmth spreads slowly, a small circle of comfort in the cold room. He sits by the fire, his hands extended to the heat, and waits for the day to begin. The winter days are shorter, the light pale and thin, the world outside reduced to shades of brown and gray and white. The farmer spends his time on the small tasks that accumulate in the margins of the growing season, repairing tools, mending the thatch on the roof, weaving baskets and sandals from straw. His wife sews, patches clothing, prepares what food she can from the limited stores. The children play quietly, their games confined by the walls and the cold. Their energy a small, bright presence in the dim hut. The family is together, more than in any other season. Their lives compressed into the small space, their interactions shaped by proximity and the shared experience of waiting. In the evenings, they tell stories. The old stories, the ones that have been passed down through generations, the ones that explain the world and its mysteries, that teach lessons and preserve memories, that connect the present to a past that grows more distant with each telling. The farmer's wife tells the story of the rice god, of how he taught the first people to farm, of how he must be honored and appeased if the harvest is to be abundant. The farmer tells the story of the warrior who became a demon, of the battle that raged for 3 days and 3 nights, of the final, desperate act that saved the village. The children listen, their eyes wide, their imaginations filling the hut with heroes and monsters and gods. The stories are not just entertainment. They are instruction, inheritance, the transmission of everything the family knows about how to live in this world. In the castle, the winter brings its own rhythms. The lord holds court less frequently, the business of the domain continuing but at a slower pace, the cold limiting travel and communication. The young lord continues his education, studying the classics, practicing his calligraphy, training in the martial arts that will be essential to his future. His father watches him with a critical eye, noting his progress, his strengths, his weaknesses. The future of the domain depends on this boy, on his development into a man capable of bearing the weight of rule. The pressure is constant, unrelenting, a presence in every lesson, every practice, every formal interaction. The young man feels it, carries it, does not speak of it. There is no one to speak to. This is simply the shape of his life, the pattern into which he was born and in which he will die. The winter deepens. The snow falls and accumulates, burying the village in a silence that feels almost complete. The paths between houses must be cleared, a daily task that grows more difficult as the snow deepens. The farmer's stores diminish, the pile of rice shrinking with each passing week. He watches it, calculates, recalculates, adjusts the rations yet again. His children are thinner now, their faces paler, their games less energetic. His wife moves more slowly, her strength sapped by the cold and the inadequate food. He does not speak of his fears. There is no point. They all know. They all watch the rice diminish, watch the winter stretch on, watch for the first signs of spring with an intensity that is itself a kind of prayer. One night, a traveler seeks shelter in the village. He is a wandering monk, his robes thin, his body shivering with cold. The headman takes him in, shares what food he can, offers a place by the fire. The monk is grateful, his thanks quiet and sincere. He stays for several days, resting, recovering, offering prayers for the village and its people. In the evenings, he talks with the headman, with the farmers who gather to hear his words. He speaks of the Buddha, of the path to enlightenment, of the suffering that is inherent in all life and the release that is possible through right understanding and right action. The farmers listen, their faces thoughtful, their minds turning over these unfamiliar ideas. They do not fully understand, perhaps, but they recognize something in the monk's words, something that speaks to their own experience of suffering, their own longing for something beyond the endless cycle of labor and hunger and fear. The monk leaves, continuing his journey, his presence already fading into memory. But something of his teaching remains, a small seed planted in the minds of the villagers. They do not become Buddhists, not in any formal sense. They continue their offerings to the local gods, their participation in the ancient rituals. But the idea of suffering as something universal, something that can be understood and perhaps transcended, this idea lingers, a small, quiet presence in the long winter evenings. The winter continues. The snow falls and melts and falls again. The rice diminishes. The cold seeps through every crack, every thin wall, every inadequate blanket. The farmer's family huddles together for warmth, their bodies sharing what heat they can generate. The children grow quieter, their games fewer, their laughter rare. The parents watch them with eyes that hold more than they can say, that hold the fear of loss, the determination to protect, the love that is itself a form of survival. They do not speak of the worst possibilities. They do not need to. The possibilities are present in every meal, in every glance at the diminishing rice, in every shiver in the cold night. And then one day there is a change. The light is different, softer. The air feels different, carrying a hint of something that is not cold. The farmer steps outside and looks at the sky, at the clouds, at the faint green tinge on the distant hills. The spring is coming. It is not here yet, not fully, but it is coming. He breathes deeply, feeling something loosen in his chest, a tightness he has carried all winter without fully noticing. He turns and goes back into the hut to tell his wife, to begin the preparations, to step once again into the cycle that has no beginning and no end. The spring arrives, slowly, tentatively, with days of warmth followed by days of cold, with snow that melts and refreezes, with mud that makes every step a labor. But it arrives. The farmers emerge from their huts, blinking in the stronger light, their bodies stiff from the long winter's inactivity. They begin the work of preparing the fields, of repairing the irrigation channels, of readying the tools and the seed rice for another season. The village comes alive again, the sounds of labor replacing the silence of winter. The children run and play, their energy returning with the warmth. The women begin the spring cleaning, airing out the huts, beating the mats, preparing for the New Year's work. The farmer walks his fields, the same fields his father worked. His grandfather worked, generations of his family reaching back into a past that has no clear beginning. The mud is soft under his feet, the water cold, the air full of the smells of wet earth and growing things. He looks at the sky, at the hills, at the small green shoots that are beginning to appear along the edges of the fields. He feels the weight of another year ahead, the labor, the hope, the fear, the endless cycle of planting and harvesting and paying and surviving. But he also feels something else, something harder to name. A continuity, connection, a place in something larger than himself. He is a farmer as his father was, as his son will be. The rice will grow or it will not. The taxes will be paid or they will not. He will survive or he will not. But the cycle will continue. The village will endure. The generations will follow one another into the endless, patient work of living on this land. He bends, picks up a handful of soil, lets it run through his fingers. Then he straightens, picks up his hoe, and begins. The spring planting begins again, as it always does, as it always will. The farmer moves through the flooded fields, his body bending and straightening in a rhythm as old as agriculture itself. The rice seedlings, grown in the nursery beds over the past weeks, are transferred one by one into the prepared mud, each one placed with care, with attention, with the knowledge that this small green shoot must survive and thrive if his family is to eat. His son works beside him now, not as a helper but as a partner, his movements almost as practiced, almost as efficient. The boy is becoming a man, his shoulders broadening, his hands learning the work that will define his life. The farmer watches him from the corner of his eye, saying nothing, but feeling something that might be pride, or might be resignation, or might be simply the recognition that the cycle continues, that he will one day be the old man sitting by the fire while his son works the fields. In another part of the village, a wedding is being prepared. The headman's daughter, a girl of 16, is to marry a young farmer from the next valley. The negotiations have been conducted over many months, the families exchanging gifts and visits and careful assessments of each other's character and resources. The match is a good one, beneficial to both families, strengthening the ties between villages and ensuring that both young people will be provided for. The girl herself has had little say in the matter, though she has been consulted, in a manner of speaking, her preferences noted and considered. She will go to her new husband's home, to live with his family, to work in his fields, to bear his children, to become part of a new household while remaining, always, connected to the one she leaves. This is the way of things. She has known it since childhood, has prepared for it through all the years of her growing. She does not resist. She does not celebrate exactly. She accepts as her mother accepted before her, as her daughters will accept after her. The wedding day arrives. The village gathers, the ceremony simple but meaningful, conducted by the local priest before a small shrine. The bride wears her best kimono, a garment that has been in her family for generations, carefully preserved, slightly faded, still beautiful. The groom wears his best, too, the formal clothing that marks this as a day apart from all others. They exchange cups of sake, 3 times each, the ritual binding them together in the presence of the gods and their families and the community that will witness and support their union. The headman watches his daughter, his face carefully composed, but his eyes betraying something: a father's love, a father's loss, the knowledge that she will leave today, will walk to another village, will become part of another family. His wife stands beside him, her hand reaching for his, a brief touch, quickly withdrawn. The ceremony ends. The feast begins. The celebration continues into the evening. The sake flowing, the food abundant, the laughter and conversation filling the village center. The bride and groom sit together, receiving congratulations, their faces showing the proper expressions of gratitude and modesty. The young people of the village dance, their movements free and energetic, a brief release from the constraints that normally bind them. The older people watch, remembering their own weddings, their own youth, their own moments of joy and hope before the long years of labor and loss and ordinary living. The farmer attends, his wife beside him, their son somewhere among the dancers. He drinks a cup of sake, then another, feeling the warmth spread through his body, feeling the cares of the winter and the planting temporarily lifted. He does not often drink, does not often allow himself this kind of release. But tonight is different. Tonight is a celebration, a reminder that life is not only work and worry, that there are moments of joy, however brief, however fleeting. The wedding party ends. The bride and groom leave for their new home, accompanied by a small procession of family members, their laughter fading into the night. The village settles back into its quiet, the sounds of the celebration replaced by the ordinary sounds of the night, the insects, the wind, the distant bark of a dog. The farmer walks home with his family, his steps a little unsteady, his mind a little blurred. He lies down in his bedding, his wife beside him, his children nearby, and he sleeps, dreaming perhaps of weddings, of youth, of all the moments that have passed and all the moments still to come. The summer returns, with its heat and its storms and its long days of labor. The rice grows, the green deepening, the plants reaching toward the sun. The farmer tends them with the same patient attention, the same endless round of tasks. His son works beside him, his presence now a constant, his skills improving with each passing week. The farmer teaches him, not through words but through example, through the simple fact of working together day after day. The boy learns to read the sky, to feel the soil, to judge the right moment for each task. He learns the names of the weeds and the pests and the beneficial insects. He learns the songs his father sings while working, songs that have been sung in these fields for generations, songs that connect him to all the farmers who came before. In the castle, the young lord continues his education, but now with a new intensity. His father has begun to involve him in the actual business of ruling, inviting him to council meetings, explaining the complexities of administration, the delicate balance of power and obligation that keeps the domain functioning. The young man listens, observes, asks careful questions. He is learning that ruling is not about glory or honor, not in the way the stories describe. It is about details, about numbers, about the endless negotiation between what is desired and what is possible. It is about managing people, their ambitions and resentments and fears. It is about making decisions that will affect thousands of lives, decisions that must be made with incomplete information and uncertain outcomes. He feels the weight of this responsibility settling onto his shoulders, a weight that will only increase with time. The summer brings a visitor to the domain, a representative of the shogun's government, traveling through the region to assess the loyalty and competence of the local lords. His arrival is anticipated with anxiety, prepared for with care. The castle is cleaned and polished, the best food prepared, the most skilled servants assigned to attend him. The Lord receives him with every courtesy, with gifts and ceremonies and endless patience. The representative is polite, observant, giving nothing away. He stays for 3 days, touring the domain, meeting with officials, asking questions that seem casual but are not. When he leaves, the Lord breathes a sigh of relief, but the anxiety does not fully dissipate. The shogun's eyes are everywhere, his reach unlimited. One must always be careful, always be vigilant, always be prepared to demonstrate loyalty and competence at a moment's notice. The summer storms come again as they always do. The farmer watches the sky with the same intensity, the same mixture of hope and fear. The rain comes, hard and steady, testing the drainage channels, threatening to flatten the rice. The farmer works through the storm, his body soaked, his movements urgent, clearing blockages, reinforcing vulnerable sections. His son works beside him, learning that the work does not stop for weather, that the farmer's duty is to the fields regardless of comfort or safety. They work through the night, by the light of a single lantern, the rain pounding around them, the thunder shaking the ground. By morning, the storm has passed, and the fields have survived. The farmer stands in the dawn light, exhausted, wet, but satisfied. The rice is bent but not broken. The work has been worth it. The autumn harvest arrives, the climax of the year's labor. The farmer and his son work from before dawn until after dark, cutting and binding and stacking, their bodies pushed to the limit of endurance. The wife brings food and water, works alongside them when she can, manages the household and the younger children. The family is a unit, a small machine of survival, each part essential, each movement coordinated by the shared purpose of bringing in the rice before the weather turns. The piles of grain grow, the storehouses fill. The promise of winter survival becomes more tangible with each passing day. The tax collectors come, and the ritual repeats itself. The farmer watches his rice being weighed, watches the Lord's share being taken, watches the remainder being counted and recorded. The pile that remains is slightly larger this year, the harvest having been good, the storms having done less damage than feared. He will not go hungry this winter. His children will not starve. It is not abundance, not prosperity, but it is enough or close enough. He carries his rice home, sets it before his wife, and watches her face as she calculates, as she realizes, as she allows herself a small, careful smile. They will survive. Another year. They will survive. The winter is milder this year, the snow less deep, the cold less bitter. The farmer's family huddles in their hut, but with less fear, with more warmth in their bellies. The rice holds out, stretched and rationed but sufficient. The pickled vegetables last. The dried fish, supplemented by the son's increasingly successful hunting trips, adds variety to the meals. The farmer looks at his son with new eyes, seeing not just a helper but a provider, a young man who will soon be ready to marry, to start his own family, to continue the line. The thought brings a complex mix of feelings, pride and loss, and the strange sensation of time passing, of one's own life moving toward its inevitable conclusion. In the evenings, the family tells stories, as always. But now the son tells stories, too, stories of his own, stories he has heard from travelers, stories he has begun to collect from the old men of the village. He has a gift for it, for the telling, for holding his listeners in the palm of his voice. The farmer listens to his son's stories, and he hears something new in them, something that was not in the stories his father told. A wider world, perhaps, a sense of possibility beyond the village, beyond the fields. He does not know what to make of it. He only listens and feels and says nothing. In the castle, the young lord has taken on more responsibility, his father gradually withdrawing from the daily business of rule. The transition is careful, managed. designed to avoid any appearance of weakness or division. But the young man feels it, the gradual shift of weight onto his own shoulders. He makes decisions now, small ones at first, then larger. He meets with retainers, receives reports, issues orders. He is learning the loneliness of command, the isolation that comes with being the one who decides, the one who bears the ultimate responsibility. He thinks sometimes of the farmers in the villages, of the people whose lives are shaped by his decisions. He has never met them, never seen their faces, never walked through their fields. They are abstractions to him, numbers in reports, names on lists. He wonders sometimes what they would think of him, if they would hate him for the taxes he imposes, if they would understand the pressures he faces, the impossible position of ruling in a world where one wrong move can mean ruin. He does not know. He will never know. He only continues as he must, as his father did, as his son will. The spring returns, and the cycle begins again. The farmer and his son prepare the fields, plant the rice, tend the young shoots. The years are passing, the farmer aware of it now in a way he was not before. His back aches more, his joints stiffen, his energy flags earlier in the day. He works anyway, as he must, as he always has. His son works beside him, stronger now, faster, taking on more of the heavy tasks without being asked. The farmer watches him, and sees himself as a young man, sees his father in the way the boy moves, sees the generations stretching forward and back in an unbroken line. He does not speak of this. There are no words for it, or the words are too large, too heavy for ordinary conversation. He only works, and watches, and feels the strange, wordless continuity of it all. The village changes slowly, almost imperceptibly. New huts are built as families grow. Old huts fall into disrepair as families die out. The children become adults, marry, have children of their own. The old people become older, then die, their names remembered for a while, then forgotten. The headman grows older, his hair gray, his steps slower. A younger man is being prepared to take his place, learning the complexities of dealing with the castle, of managing disputes, of representing the village to the outside world. The transition will happen when it must, as smoothly as possible, the village's need for continuity balanced against the inevitability of change. The merchant's son has taken over the family business. His father now retired, sitting by the fire, watching his son navigate the same challenges he faced for so many years. The business continues, thrives even, the connections carefully maintained, the reputation for fair dealing and quality goods spreading through the region. The son has expanded, opening a small stall in the castle town, hiring an assistant to manage it. The family's prosperity grows quietly, carefully, always mindful of the need to appear modest, to avoid attracting the wrong kind of attention. The old merchant watches his son's success with satisfaction, with the knowledge that his life's work will continue, that his name will mean something after he is gone. The young samurai, now a man, serves his lord with the same dedication his father showed. He has distinguished himself in minor ways, in the training grounds, in the careful navigation of court politics. He has married, a woman chosen for him by his family, a good match that strengthens alliances and ensures the continuation of his line. He has children now, a son and a daughter, and he watches them with the same complex feelings his own father had, the pride and the worry and the weight of expectation. He trains his son in the ways of the warrior, teaches him the codes, the rituals, the endless discipline of the samurai life. He watches his daughter learn the arts of the household, the calligraphy and the tea ceremony and the careful management of servants and resources. He sees his own childhood reflected in theirs, the same lessons, the same expectations, the same narrowing of possibility into the single path that has been laid out for them. The years pass. The cycles continue. The rice is planted and harvested. The taxes are paid. The children are born and grow and marry and have children of their own. The old people die and are buried, their graves tended for a time, then forgotten as new generations take their place. The village endures, changing slowly, imperceptibly, but enduring. The castle endures, its walls solid, its authority unquestioned. The domain endures, a small piece of the larger order that is Japan, that is the world, that is the endless, patient unfolding of time. The farmer grows old. His son now does most of the heavy work, the farmer's role shifting to supervision, to advice, to the small tasks that do not require a young man's strength. He sits more often by the fire, his body grateful for the rest, his mind turning over the memories of a lifetime. He remembers his father, his mother, his wife when she was young, his children when they were small. He remembers good harvests and bad, storms that destroyed and storms that passed, years of plenty and years of near starvation. He remembers the faces of people who are gone now, the sounds of voices that will never be heard again. He sits by the fire, and he remembers, and he waits. His grandchildren come to him asking for stories. He tells them the old stories, the ones his father told him, the ones that have been told in this village for as long as anyone can remember. They listen, their eyes wide, their imaginations filling with heroes and gods and the distant past. They do not understand, yet, that these stories are also about them, about the world they live in, about the forces that shape their lives. They only listen and feel and remember, and when they are old, they will tell these same stories to their own grandchildren, and the cycle will continue, the words passing from generation to generation like the rice seed, like the knowledge of the fields, like the patient, enduring spirit of the village itself. The old farmer dies, quietly, in his sleep, on a winter night when the snow falls softly outside his hut. His son finds him in the morning, his face peaceful, his hands folded on his chest. The village mourns, briefly, appropriately. The funeral is conducted, the prayers offered, the body returned to the earth from which it came. His wife survives him, living with their son and his family, her place by the fire now hers alone. She sits there in the evenings, sometimes speaking, sometimes silent, sometimes seeming to listen to voices that no one else can hear. She will not last long, everyone knows, but she will last as long as she must, as long as the cycle requires. The son, now the farmer, works the fields his father worked, his grandfather worked, generations reaching back into a past that has no clear beginning. He works with his own son, the boy growing into a man, learning the same lessons, the same skills, the same patient endurance. The cycle continues. The rice is planted and harvested. The taxes are paid. The children are born and grow and marry. The village endures. The castle endures. The world turns, slowly, patiently, without beginning and without end. In the castle, the old lord dies, and his son, the young man who was once a boy preparing for his coming of age, now becomes the lord in truth. The transition is smooth, prepared for over many years, accepted by all. The new lord sits in the seat of authority, receives the bows of his retainers, begins the work of ruling that will occupy the rest of his life. He thinks of his father, of the weight that has now fully passed to his own shoulders. He thinks of his son, still a child, who will one day take this same seat, bear this same weight. He thinks of the domain, of the villages, of the farmers whose labor supports it all. He does not know their names, will never see their faces, but he knows they are there, knows that his rule depends on their labor, their endurance, their patient acceptance of the order that places him above them and them below him. He sits in his seat and he begins. The night comes as it always does. The village settles into darkness, the sounds of the day fading into the quiet of rest. The castle settles into its own darkness, the corridors empty, the screens closed, the lord sleeping in his chamber. The The forest settles into the deep, wild darkness that has never known a human light. The stars will overhead, the same stars that have watched over this land for millennia, that will watch over it for millennia to come. And somewhere, in a hut at the edge of the village, a child wakes in the darkness, crying. Its mother takes it, comforts it, feeds it. The child settles, sleeps. The mother lies awake for a moment, listening to the night, to the silence, to the small sounds that mean the world is still there, still turning, still carrying them all through the darkness toward the light that will come, as it always does, as it always will.